Did we just watch the number one team in the country go to Lincoln on Saturday night and come away with a 41-point win? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the Buckeyes. The way to do it is to do it the way we do it, with just an all-star panel each and every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time, talking Ohio State football. We got Claire Crawford on the line from the Buckeye Beat Report, and also Tony Gerdeman from the Ozone.net. And a couple stragglers may come by in the meantime. Claire, what a performance on Saturday night. Not by you personally. What a performance by the Buckeyes on Saturday night. I wasn't shocked. Nebraska hasn't proven anything yet, but I just thought, especially that defense, my goodness, with all those playmakers and speed, and a dual threat quarterback of the ability of Adrian Martinez to basically shut them out. I will call it a shutout, not technically, but in regards to meaningful football being played, they shut out Nebraska.
I think the most surprising thing for me, because I was a little surprised, the most surprising thing was how well balanced this Buckeye football team seems to be turning out to be. And I think as Buckeye fans, we've watched Ohio State have great defenses and have great offenses, and it's been a really long time since we've had the luxury of seeing both. And now again, I'm walking with some trepidation here, because I, like you, think Nebraska might be slightly overrated and have been slightly overrated coming into the season, considering their record last year, which I know you don't like to do. But they're still a really good football team. So Ohio State handled their business like they should have against Nebraska. And again, I think just the balance of this team was probably the most surprising thing. JK tipped over the 3,000-yard mark. It's really amazing to watch him do what he's been wanting to do since his freshman year. So pretty excited about that young man as well.
Tony, in a game in which there could be a laundry list of items to be impressed by, what would be your top two or three?
Oh, wow. There is a list. I think you mentioned it, Mark, the shutout. The Ohio State starters gave up 91 yards. The Ohio State starting defense gave up 91 yards of total offense while they were in the game. They leave the game, and then Nebraska goes on drives of like 75 and 65 yards. But that first-team Ohio State defense, and beyond the first team, the guys who rotate in there as well, because they've got 2 middle linebackers, and they rotate in 8 defensive linemen and maybe more, depending on who's healthy. And so this is more than just a starting defense, but the guys that play regularly have been extremely impressive. And I'm starting to wonder if these 3 corners of Damon Arnett and Sean Wade and Jeff Okudah are as good as the 2016 corners of Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore, and Denzel Ward, because they're playing like it. There's no weak link with this defense right now. And it starts, we talk about the secondary. I'm talking about the secondary, but it starts with Chase Young, and it starts with Devon Hamilton inside, a defensive tackle. And they're all just one continuous beast, this thing that just keeps getting larger and stronger and feeding off of everybody they come into contact with. And for me, that's the most impressive thing, is how well they work as a unit. They get tested on a couple of drives or, just a couple of plays, and then they snuff it out. Nebraska was running stuff with the I formation, and that was working until it wasn't. They called a timeout and they stopped it. You saw like Indiana or Cincinnati Miami would have some success out wide, then they would sniff it out and stop it. And that's what this defense does. Yeah. They have they've shown no weaknesses right now, and that's the most impressive thing for me.
Yeah, it was quite impressive. And Liza Purdue joining us on the live chat, asking about the running back rotation. And obviously, this was the type game in which J.K. Dobbins was able to get his 24 attempts, rack up almost 200 yards at 177, and still have plenty of time for Master Teague and Justin Fields at quarterback. I think he plays quarterback, doesn't he? He's not a running back, is he? Yeah, I'm reading a stat line and just 12 and 12. So Master Teague, 12 for 77. Marcus Crowley got 4 carries as well. So they got those guys into the game, and they've looked really good. all season as well. So that's something that I think is going to be key going forward, Tony, in regards to a running back rotation in which there's not one guy. So I talked Florida State a couple hours ago. They got Cam Akers. They've got nothing besides him, where to be able to showcase those other guys, albeit in garbage time, but still against the first string players, and they get their reps in the first half as well. Not all garbage time carries, but the backup to be able to go three deep at running back, that's not something Ohio State has had all the time.
No, they haven't. And really, they've struggled to find that third guy. And now they've got basically two of them with Marcus Crowley and Demario McCall. Steel Chambers will probably redshirt because they don't need him. And, Marcus Crowley has played in every game, so he can't redshirt. He's played 5 games now, so he's part of it. So now he is going to play. You won't just hide him now. And when he's been in there, he's shown that he belongs. But when you see what Master Teague does when he gets the ball and the way how hard he runs, and now they're maybe involving him in the passing game a little bit more, he's a guy that together with J.K. Dobbins, it's almost like lightning and thunder with J.K. and Master Teague, because they're different backs. They can both hit home runs, but Teague is the biggest of the backs. He's the fastest of the backs.
Little boom and zoom.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't know that he doesn't quite have, I think, JK's vision yet, but it'll come. But those two together just complement each other so well because they are different, but they can do everything that you need each other to do.
And I think what we're seeing out of JK now too is, something that we didn't see as much of last year is these yards after contact. He's running tough. He's falling forward. His vision, his patience. We're seeing him block better, and it's becoming this complete package because we're seeing the offensive line do better in their run blocking. But it's incredible to watch JK grow in the entirety of his position as a back, and get those extra 1, 2, 3 yards after contact.
And that was something they talked to JK about all offseason, running tougher, and that's what they wanted from him. Turn 3-yard carries into 5-yard carries, 6-yard carries into 8-yard carries. And as long as he did that, then home runs would eventually come. And we're seeing that now where he's hitting some longer runs that he didn't do last year. And he is running you mentioned it, Claire, he's running so much more harder than he did last year. And he's pulling guys, and he's like 5'10", 215 pounds. But there's times where he runs like he's 225, and he's putting dudes on the ground, and that is it's contagious for the entire offense when they see him doing that. The offensive line loves it, and they love blocking for him. And then as defenses begin to key on him, here comes Justin Fields. He keeps it, and there he goes for 50 yards. And now that's something they didn't have last year. That's 2 things actually 3 things that the team didn't have last year when it comes to the running game. You've got the threat of the quarterback run. You've got JK running like he's angry. And you have an offensive line that run blocks like their lives depend on it. And I had a feeling coming into the season that they were going to be a better run blocking unit because there are more guards in this group. Last year it was a bunch of tackles, and just talking to them, they didn't have the same kind of like demeanor that this group has, where these guys are a little grittier, and they're showing it each week, and they get challenged really well, and they get coached up really well. And then you see one guy goes down, another guy steps in, and they don't even miss the beat.
I heard David Pollack at ESPN make the comment this week that he said Ohio State's the best football team in the country right now. Apparently, according to David his name is Greenshield, David Greenshield, who joins us on a regular basis. David, good to see you out there. Thanks for repping the Buckeyes and being a faithful viewer. Apparently Kirk Herbstreit compared this team to the 2006 team. When I'm making comparisons between teams of the same school, there's a number of ways to do that. You can just look at, okay, who are the best of the best, regardless of their style or the quarterback style or how good a certain position is. Just who are the best teams, 2014, 15, 06, et cetera, on down the line, 02, of course, versus we're looking for style. And style starts at quarterback with me. And for Justin Fields, he looks like Braxton Miller to me. I think that's the most obvious skill set comparison there. I don't know that I can compare the rest of the team. This defense has the opportunity be much better than any defense that supported Braxton Miller at quarterback. Certainly those 2012 and 13 defenses had their leaks, especially that 13 unit late in the season against the likes of Michigan and others. So I don't know how to compare this team right now. I got to see them play again. This Michigan State game will be key. Penn State and others, and of course the game at the end of the year.
I was worried that your friend David Greenshield here was trolling us by comparing this Ohio State team to a 98 team in Michigan State week. I was a little concerned about that.
No, not him.
Then he reps the Buckeyes. Okay.
Yeah, let's not talk about that 98 game. I was in the stands for that. And I stayed in the stands for a while after the game because I don't think my legs worked yet at that point.
Yeah, we actually talked to D. Miller this week, who I believe was the target of that last pass in the end zone from Joe Germain. Yeah, that he was blanketed by those Michigan State corners, and they blew like a 24-9 lead, if I remember correctly.
You know, it's funny when people talk about the upsets that Michigan State has caused Ohio State, you know, the titles that they have caused Ohio State to lose. I guess it's because I cover the team now. I'm not emotionally as connected as I was in 98 when I was a student, but I immediately first think of the game 21 years ago. To me, that's the greatest defeat of my life. You know, it's the worst moment of my life. It was that game at the time. And when people talk about 2013 or 2015, I'm like, yeah, you know, those things happen. That's football. Back then, it was the end of the world.
Absolutely, it was.
Football. Yeah.
My little story from that game was that I was reminded when I had my little, about a 6-month-old at the time, tugging at my pant leg at the end of the game, that he just wanted to play. That I guess there is other things going on in this world that are near and dear. So that's when I started to have a little bit more of a reality check. But yeah, the Michigan State series has been quite the series down through the years, and I went on line to look at the betting lines early in the week and saw 20 points. I remember I had the same reaction though 2 years ago with a Michigan State team that eventually won the Holiday Bowl, finished 10-3, finished in the top 15 in the country. Lo and behold, a 17-point underdog, and I'm like, I love the Buckeyes, but man, I'm taking the 17 points. 48-3. So I'm not predicting 48-3, but there is a talent discrepancy across the roster that makes this a difficult chore for the Michigan State offense in particular, Tony.
Yeah, definitely. And I was as surprised as you were when I saw that 20, because that's a lot. And Ohio State may get there, but I wouldn't touch that one just because Michigan State's defense is really good. Now, Michael Penix in Indiana, they made some ground up, you know, with the passing game and getting him out of the pocket. I think he completed 20 passes in a row at one time. So they haven't faced a rushing team like Ohio State yet. And I think that's pretty obvious by you look at the teams they've played. There's nobody that does what Ohio State can do. But this is a real defense. And you could see Nebraska getting gutted last week by what Ohio State was going to do. This is going to be 4 quarters, or at least 3.5. I don't know if Ohio State's going to play a 4-quarter game this year, but this is not going to be nearly as easy as the other games. But I also think the Buckeyes are looking forward to that because they haven't played 4 quarters yet, and they enjoy playing football, and they will probably play more football this week than they have all season. And so they are excited about that. Plus, they still have doubters, and we could talk about this guy thinks they should be number 1. This guy thinks they should be number 1. But after every week, it's like, well, let's see what they do this week before people really want to buy in. And I'm sure if they do that, if they blow Michigan State out, they're going to make them look worse than they are. And then they'll create another, like, they made Nebraska look very bad. They make everybody look very bad. Maybe those teams aren't as bad as Ohio State makes them look. And maybe we'll see that again this week.
I like how, you know, somebody asked Jeff Hafley this week if, you know, when is he going to start like putting more wrinkles into this defensive game plan? And he's like, why? Right? Like, sure, there's stuff that we haven't seen, that you haven't seen, and we haven't shown anyone, but like, I'm really proud of this team and how this defense is functioning with fundamentals and doing an amazing job with the fundamentals right now. Why would we need to reinvent the wheel of this defense? And I think in Lincoln, it was the fundamentals that led to these turnovers. It was these players taking all of the wrinkles away, allowing them to be instinctive athletes, which they are. And that's what put the blood in the water for this defense, and I think really turned the tide. And it's cyclical. It fires up the offense, and I think if this Ohio State defense can do the same with kind of a banged up Michigan State offensive line, it could be a similar situation if they get off to a fast start.
You're right, Claire. When Ryan Day or Jeff Hafley talks about the defense, before they talk about the changes they've made or this or that, they credit the technique and the fundamentals of the players, because without that, none of the rest of it matters. But they are so sound. You can ask them to do complicated stuff, or you can ask them to do very simple stuff, and they still get the job done. And as long as things are simple and you're getting the job done, what is it? Keep it simple, stupid. Don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be until it needs to be more difficult.
Hashtag basic defense.
There you go.
Yeah. Isn't the wrinkle philosophy what got them into trouble last year?
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. Too many wrinkles, not enough irons.
I like it.
Absolutely. And Michigan State, somehow I did not see a play from this game against Indiana, but 40-31, I was surprised at what IU was able to do to this Michigan State defense that hasn't been touched going back through most of last season. Man, they were losing games 7-6 in the bowl game, and like that, the defense for Michigan State by every conceivable metric has been just about as good as any in the country for the past 15 to 20 games. And then Indiana comes to East Lansing last week and puts up 31. And like you say, Tony, had all sorts of success through the air. So it gives the Buckeyes something to look at on tape that's been successful for the first time in a long time against Sparty.
And Ryan Day was asked, how often do you look at what the team did last week that was successful? Like, will you do what Indiana did, basically? And he's like, well, teams usually clean that part up before you get a chance to exploit it. So they might not be doing the same stuff that Indiana does, but they have enough stuff that they do that works. And as somebody mentioned there in the comments that Justin Fields hasn't seen a defense like Michigan State, they're absolutely correct. But Michigan State hasn't seen anything like Justin Fields or J.K. Dobbins or Master Teague or the passing game that comes from the play action or the many different formations that Ohio State has been using in the offense and what they could do with it. And this is Justin Fields, who on one play can run a quarterback sweep to the right. On the next play can throw from the right hash to the left sideline on an out and not be touched by a corner. So this is a very versatile offense where Michigan State has answers for everything defensively, but they're going to have to be, as you said, sound and, technique-wise with Ohio State. Michigan State, this needs to be their very best game on defense to make it a game, to just keep it close. They need to play their best game now. Now we talk about, can they win? That's going to require mistakes from Ohio State.
All right, talking Ohio State football every Wednesday night. Tony Gerdeman on the line from the ozone.net and Claire Crawford, Buckeye Claire, from the Buckeye Beat Report. We usually we're missing Steve Hellwagon tonight. Also missing Kevin Noon. We're trying to pick up our spirits here and trying to keep this thing going, but they're coming back from some travels. So we will catch up with them next week following Ohio State and Michigan State. And I'm not expecting 48-7, although, again, 45-3 2 years ago. Last year in East Lansing, it was that ugly punt game. It was the Drew Chrisman show in the second half, pinning Michigan State inside the 3 time and time again. And it was the offense doing little, but the defense certainly shutting out Sparty, shutting them down, as did most defenses in the Big Ten much of last season. Brian Lewerke has had a rough go against the Buckeyes during his brief career. Now he's a junior, I believe. Or is he a senior?
Redshirt junior, I believe.
Redshirt junior, really good season last 2 years ago, 20 touchdowns, like 8
Mhm.
picks. Had his issues last year. Was banged up with a shoulder issue. Looks to be pretty healthy. Although, man, what an up and down offense. So we expected the offense to have its struggles, but there were disclaimers about injuries in particular last year. Have been looking for a legitimate number one back for a long time. When I think Michigan State football, you guys, I think Mark D'Antonio built this program on great defense, remarkable corner play, the front seven's relentless, linebackers pursuing all over the place, hitting like, Dick Butkus, and then you've got a sturdy quarterback, and you've got a running game. Their running game has been abysmal going back to about the college football playoff year of 2015. They have not developed a running game. They've not had that kind of back, and they used to have 2 or 3
Mhm.
capable good backs. And they've not had that. And now they've got this Eli Collins kid who may be the answer, possibly. But the running game has not been good. Now they've had very up and down play, but at least they've shown some flashes on offense in the most recent one. Of course, last week against, that's right, it was Tom Allen's top 20 defense there at Indiana. So they did put up 40 last week. So there's a little bit of life there, you guys, with Sparty putting up some points recently.
I think with the Michigan State players and coaches have come out and said that they're using that blowout as fodder. I feel like you're coming into the shoe at night. That should be all the motivation that you need. This is possibly the East on the line here. They're battling that out. That should really be their only motivation. They haven't scored a touchdown against Ohio State since 2016. All of this should be, it should be enough. They shouldn't have to use a blowout, but it's going to be a bigger challenge for them to climb than I think they're ready for.
I have been confused by this Michigan State offense, but the last 2 weeks they are scoring points, so I think that is makes it more of a concern, obviously. But I don't think they're consistent enough to really. They've scored 31 and 40 the last 2 weeks. I don't see them scoring 31 in this game, and I see kind of Ohio State. Maybe that's about where they are against Michigan State, maybe in that 31-point range. And obviously we'll get to our picks later, I know, but I'm not buying into this Michigan State offense. They're averaging about 4 yards per carry. They've had some decent success with receivers and throwing the ball up and letting them go get it. And Lewerke, if he's healthy, that's great. He can keep plays alive. He can keep it on the zone read, and maybe they need to do some more of that this week. But I'm not sold on the offensive line. They've protected very well, but we'll see how that goes this week. They've had some issues at offensive tackle. They're going to have more this week with Chase Young, obviously coming after Brian Lewerke and getting to know him very well, I would think. This is Chase Young, who's had a sack in now 7 straight games, I believe, dating back to last year, and leads the nation with 8 sacks right now. And I don't necessarily see that streak stopping against Michigan State. When you're so inconsistent on offense, it's hard for me to expect that Michigan State to play their best against the best defense they've seen.
All right, here's the deal, folks. We do this each and every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. We talk Ohio State football, and I don't know that it gets any better than this anywhere, so please lock it in as we now get into the meat of the schedule. It's Nebraska last week, Michigan State, and they just keep coming and coming and coming. No more Florida Atlantics, no more Cincinnati's, no more Miami of Ohio's. It's pretty serious. There is a Rutgers game out there, but it's pretty serious from here on out with the Buckeyes. So this is the time to lock in. And also, don't be selfish. Get out there on social media. Let people know that we are here each and every Wednesday night. And if you don't want to sort through all the other college football videos here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, we've got an Ohio State channel, Mark Rogers TV, Ohio State. Just lock it in over there. You get the same videos, and I chop them up for you based on topic, and you can just lock in on Ohio State football talk. If you're the type that doesn't sit there watching, the Maryland Indiana game on a Saturday afternoon, you're watching Ohio State games from like 2012, and then you're listening to Tony and watching him and and you're just trying to soak up as much about the Buckeyes. That's what you do, and you don't care about anybody else. That's not me, but that's I can certainly respect that. So lock it in on Scarlet and Gray again at our Ohio State channel. How good is Michigan State, Tony? What's going to be the end result of this team? Did you have a preseason prognostication? Have they done anything to alter that? They had one of those bummers against Arizona State where they put up a whopping 7 points.
Yeah.
That's
I think if I go back to my preseason tally, they may have been right behind Michigan or right ahead of Michigan for number 2 in my East. But I think they're as good as they ever are, but not as great as they have been. You know, they're not like the 2015 team or whatever that made the playoffs where they looked a lot better than this. But I think they have the capabilities of beating just about everybody on their schedule. I don't. I'm not going to say they can't do that this week because I've seen stranger things involving these two teams, but it would surprise me greatly if they came into Ohio State and had enough offense and enough defense to get this done. And like I said, it would take some turnovers from Ohio State, which is something, Ohio State's not turning the ball over. They're not committing penalties. If they're not going to beat themselves, who in the Big Ten is going to beat them? Who? Wisconsin? I don't know. I think if Ohio State stays clean, stays fundamental, keeps with their technique at every position, and just lets their talent win out, and don't provide help for the opponents like Michigan State. If they don't help Michigan State, then Michigan State, I don't see it. And how good are they? I think they could win 9-10 games this year, but they're going to have to play better now moving forward if they're going to have 2 losses coming out after this week.
Claire, what do you think about Michigan State? What do you think about the state of the Big Ten? I think it's a very deep conference, and I what bothers me from a Big Ten standpoint is that there just weren't the quality of non-conference games to prove that. We've got Michigan, Notre Dame on the board later in the season, and based on what we've seen of the Wolverines and based on what we saw out of the Irish at Georgia, that may not be favorable for the Big Ten. But otherwise, Penn State, Wisconsin, they look like the 2 challengers right now.
And the Big Ten right now has just as many undefeated teams as the SEC does right now.
No, it can't be.
Yeah. What? Say what? Not the mighty SEC. And the problem is that's all going to be cannibalized on both sides. And I think I saw a Mark Rogers video about a 3 SEC possible college football playoffs. So
I didn't make that statement.
Mark, I can't believe it.
I do have guests on my show. I give them freedom.
Your show. I haven't watched that one yet. But yeah, I'm right around where Tony is. I think what we talked about early, preseason stuff with all 5 of us on here, is talking about the adaptability of Michigan State and Michigan State getting better throughout the season. I just don't know if those increments are going to be enough to overcome this kind of challenge at night in the shoe against a Buckeye team that really is peaking right now and is getting better every week. Justin Fields is spending more time on campus, learning more offense. They're, knock on wood, fairly healthy on both sides of the ball. It's difficult at this time in the season, like you mentioned, to compare really any conference until they get into real conference play, like Ohio State did last Saturday.
I compare them, Claire. I've got my conference rankings video out. I still compare them.
Clemson fans are not going to want to bring up that topic after their showing last Saturday. Barely squeaking one out. And there are experts that are still ranking Clemson top 5, top 3, top 2. So it's like you say in your top 25 that makes sense about, who have you played and what have you done for me lately. I'm slightly pessimistic when it comes to just the Big Ten in general and what they're going to be able to do kind of postseason is the only way to really measure that against any other conference.
Claire, if you want to be some level of spokesperson, marketing, sales on the side.
For Mark Rogers TV,
yes,
or for the weekend?
That was beautiful.
Oh,
you weave like three different videos and
top 25 that makes sense.
It was
and,
beautiful.
It's good clickbait. The 3 SEC college football playoff. It made me angry just thinking about it.
I can't give you any grief for that, Mark, because a couple weeks ago I wrote a piece asking if the playoffs would feature 5 SEC teams this year. So just to bypass, because I know people are talking about 3, I'm going to bypass the move to 4. I'm going straight to 5 because
maybe the committee comes back on Selection Sunday and they come out and say, we're going to have to do something unprecedented here because we just have such a dilemma that we're going to have to go to a 5-team playoff.
Exactly.
Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Auburn, Florida. There you go. There's your 5-team playoff.
And
you guys got to be rooting for Joe Burrow, though. That's pretty amazing what's happening down in LSU.
It's cool.
It's pretty awesome to see.
No, and he was always. I like to see the fire that he brings to LSU, to that offense, to that entire team. He's cocky, he's arrogant, but he's just got that fire that everybody loves him. Even still at Ohio State, his old teammates still love him. I saw Johnny Dixon, a receiver for last year's team who came in 2014. He said he couldn't. There's those tweets of who's your Heisman pick, and Justin Fields and Joe Burrow were 2 of the 4 picks, and he's like, well, I can't choose either. I can't choose because 2 of my guys are on this, so I can't pick one. They still love Joe Burrow. Ryan Day still loves Joe Burrow. Urban Meyer, when you see him on the Fox show, he could go on and on about Joe Burrow. And there's a reason when a guy has that kind of lasting impact on people, it says a lot about what he's done in the time he was there. And it says a lot that nobody at Ohio State holds any ill will for him leaving and being a part of the situation that they had at quarterback in the winter and after the season when everybody's bailing. Joe Burrow was part of that, and he left earlier, obviously, but he there's no concern or no anger his way for putting Ohio State in a situation that almost didn't turn out well. And it's a testament to him as just a guy, basically.
I want to recognize the contribution. I divided that word into like 3 syllables with like second pauses in between all of them. The contribution from it's been a long. Believe me,
I thought I was buffering
when we're on hour 3 of the live stream, and then after this, I'm going to do ACC talk and Florida Gators talk until 11. All right, New York Buck. Thank you so much for the contribution to the channel. And again, folks out there, if you just kind of catch the vision here of what is possible, and I know the contribution is very significant, and I very much appreciate it from New York Buck, but it doesn't have to be that just a little tiny bit. There's 14,000 of you out there, 17,000 total. It would be, we could do big things here. But we already do big things. We got Tony Goodman on the line from theozone.net. Please join his work right there. Claire, where can we find your new enterprise?
BuckeyeBeatReport.com, or as I said a couple of weeks ago, online.
Is it online? The newfangled thing out there. Very good. Ohio State football talk. We've got 96 on the line. Man, all those Buckeyes fans out there, can you imagine? There's zillions of them out there that don't know what they're missing. So, folks, let your Ohio State fans know in your sphere of influence that we're here every Wednesday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time. There's quite a showdown. Now, I will disclaim this comment when I say quite a showdown at the Big House, recognizing that I made the same statement about the Wisconsin-Michigan matchup two weeks ago in Camp Randall, and it didn't turn out to be any kind of a game. But and in Iowa, to a certain extent, U2 is almost like the just a facsimile of Wisconsin, just in regards to We know who we are. We know what we do. We know our limitations. We don't care. This is what we do. We're technically sound. We're tough. We're gritty. We don't back down from anyone. And here we come. We're coming to the big house. And of course, unlike that Wisconsin game, it's on the road for Iowa, and they're a roughly 5-point underdog at Michigan. But this is going to fascinate me from the standpoint of Michigan. Again, they're supposed to be better. They got the better recruited athletes and all of that. But Iowa, they're just a tough bunch. They know who they are, and they're going to show up and play and do their thing. And they've been rock solid. Haven't played anyone real good, but they went to Iowa State and won. But they are rock solid.
They don't have Jonathan Taylor, but nobody does. But like you said, they're not going to necessarily hurt themselves. I don't think Michigan's going to be able to run the ball against Iowa. And if you can't run the ball, now everything is going to be close. It's going to be a fight. And you get AJ Epinesa up there causing havoc against Shea Patterson. If Shea Patterson doesn't turn the ball over, then Michigan State, I think will probably win. I don't have a lot of faith in Michigan's offense right now, and I don't have a lot of faith in their defense either. But Iowa's offense is maybe suited more for what Michigan State is capable of right now, where they can make above average offenses. Maybe they can handle that sort of stuff, as long as there's no dynamic one guy that like Jonathan Taylor. But I expect Shea Patterson to continue to turn the ball over, and that's gonna lose them possessions, obviously. And that passing game that Michigan has is kind of good at times, but Iowa's defense, like you said, it's just solid. They're just going to keep coming. It's like a combine out in the field. It's not fast, it's not agile, but it gets the job done. Just straight line, straight line, straight line, and it never fails. And that's kind of what this just Iowa program is. And Michigan's last week's win meant nothing. The Rutgers win means nothing. That was just a little confidence boost, but that confidence can go away on the first drive of this game right away. And I want to see how Michigan does when they face adversity again, because they will. I don't expect everything to go great because they're not good enough for that to happen. And if Dylan McCaffrey is still out, they don't have anybody behind Shea Patterson that can do anything. And I'm not convinced that Shea Patterson can do much. So are we looking at like a 17-13 type of game here?
So before you go, Claire, just want to remind everyone to clean up your spelling in the live chat. We will not have any of it. Mineral Tim 79, you all suck at spelling. We will not tolerate that. Clean up the spelling. Clean up the spelling. Yes, Claire.
I'm not going to say much other than just to troll Michigan, because Tony did a really good job of covering X's and O's, and I can talk about intangibles like Michigan saying that because they're like, this Ivy League level school and they can compete against, I'm hoping you saw that, Mark, that they said that, it's really hard to get into Michigan and it's really hard to stack up against that. And because of that is why they're playing like they're playing right now. And they can play against anybody in the Big Ten and also have to get the grades of an Ivy League school. But for some reason, they were having trouble releasing those SAT scores, the average SAT scores of the team. But that's none of my business, as I sip my tea. But if I'm going to troll anybody, it's not going to be Iowa after Ohio State faces that challenge. So that's just my job to troll Michigan on this show.
Yeah, if you guys haven't read it, go check out David Briggs from the Toledo Blade, who FOIA'd, Freedom of Information Act, tried to get Michigan's SAT and ACT scores from the last few years for the football team. Ohio State gave them, yeah, exactly, because of that. And Ohio State gave them theirs, and Michigan refused to. And for a university that touts, the whole Harvard of the Midwest or whatever, and we are like Stanford and Northwestern and Ivy Leagues, they tout it, but they didn't want to prove it. And that is, that's very Michigan, actually. That might be, that's peak Michigan right there, when you tout something, you say it, but you have no proof of it.
All right. Ohio State Buckeyes Live. We do it each and every week. Here with typically 5 of us. We're missing Kevin Noon from Buckeye Grove and also Steve Hellwagon, of course, from Bucknuts on 247 Sports. Man, when I got to read off the top of my head all 4 of your sites, it gets kind of difficult. We got Tony Gerdeman on the line also and Claire Crawford. All right. We could dive into predictions unless there's any kind of angle to Michigan State football that we haven't hit. There's always the uniform angle. I just despise these black uniforms. That's all there is to it. Ohio State should be wearing scarlet and gray. I just the alternate uniforms. Just wear your uniforms.
Mark, you are such an old.
I know I am. Need me telling. Yeah, I didn't need to hear that from you. Yes.
We
all got the message about the uniforms.
Yeah. There we go. We're all dark.
We're in line.
I'm a little bit off, but I'll take it. I'm right there. Sure. I get the blue on, but yeah, we're there.
As long as recruits like it, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, and that's literally why they did. They twisted Urban's arm long enough for him to give up into Nike and say, yeah, this is worth it, and the recruits like it, and they've had a couple alternatives since Urban has said yes to it. So I'm surprised that Ryan is going for it this early, but hey, why not?
Folks, let me explain something. In Mineral Tim 79, while you are cleaning up the spelling in the live chat, also understand that there are hundreds of comments scrolling by. So I'm trying to engage in the conversation, but also highlight the best comments. But also understand, if I highlight a comment and I put it on screen, then I can only go back like 10 comments before that. So I have lost maybe 52 or 78 or 119 comments, and I can't get those. So I cannot highlight every comment. I don't see every comment. And even the ones I see, I can't grab everyone and put it on.
I'm glad I can't.
So I apologize if I did not get your comment.
Make them count.
Amazing about Ryan Day's offense resembling an NFL offense. I think it's.
I got lambasted when I said that.
When I'm watching the NFL, you guys, on a Sunday, I'm watching college football. So I don't know that there's an NFL offense, a pro style offense anymore.
What's the NFL?
Yeah, no, it's funny because the NFL always adopts college football stuff, and then it becomes this revolutionary thing. But then eventually it goes away and just becomes the NFL again, and it's very hand the ball off and throw on third down and pro style, and things are starting to change, but I don't know if it's NFL. I know obviously he comes from the NFL, so there's going to be some of that, but a lot of this is still Urban Meyer, his offense, with some Chip Kelly influence and some Ryan Day influence, and now there's Kevin Wilson influence, some Mike Yurcich things in there. They've gone under center now, so I don't know that it's not one thing. It's what Ryan Day calls it is the same thing that Urban Meyer calls it, is the same thing that Jim Tressel called it, and it's the Ohio State offense. And no matter who is calling the plays or what it looks like, that's the name of it. But there are some things that you'll see on Sundays from what Ohio State does. But I think that's everywhere pretty much. I mean, what Michigan used to do was pro style offense, but it depends on your personnel, the play calling and everything else. The labels that you attach to it are pretty meaningless to me.
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question. Claire, I don't know if you have anything to add to that in regards to the style of Ryan Day's offense.
No, I had mentioned what I thought it was most resembling and got absolutely skewered in the comment section, which I shouldn't have ventured into.
You did?
Had something to do with my chromosomes, right? Why I was not correct in that, but also none of my business. But yeah, I was going to say, speaking of pay to play, the newest thing to happen in college football in California, I don't know that you've talked to anybody about it yet, but I think we may have a few minutes to cover it before we go over our picks.
Absolutely.
But California passing legislation that says that players can make money off of their likeness.
Yeah, and they won't be the last state, and Florida's getting close, and no state is going to want to be left behind here. But what Gene Smith, Ohio State athletic director, said on Tuesday was this can't be a state thing. This has to be a federal thing. and he said he's against what California is proposing or has actually signed into law because it's just a one state thing, and there are very few regulations. And while a lot of people took what he said as him being completely against name, image, and likeness, the general sense, if you were in the room, is that he couldn't give us his thoughts on whether he was for it or against it out of deference to the committee that he is on that is talking about this and going through this. But he also said there is room for something in this area and name, image, and likeness. And so when you see everybody saying he's totally against this or whatever, that's not the vibe that I got. And I think this is coming. This is going to happen.
He wants to do it the right way.
Exactly. And they have to sit down and talk about the intended consequences, the unintended consequences, because there's going to be plenty of both. How do you regulate it? Now, the law in California states that everything has to go through the school. Well, the school has to be made aware of any deals that you sign. You can't sign like any competing deals. Like if you're a Nike school, you can't sign a deal with Reebok. If you're a Coca-Cola school, you can't sign a deal with Pepsi. The schools cannot pay you. And I know a lot of people view this as schools are going to be paying players. That's not what this is. This is kids going out on their own, basically, and getting deals. But what's going to happen if there are no regulations is schools are going to use their alumni and their own base to get kids deals. So that's why Gene Smith wants to avoid that portion of it. But I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you avoid that kind of power that these schools have, where you can, where you have so many people who want to pay these kids in terms of just come to Ohio State. I'll give you, the under the table stuff. That's always going on. And now when you legalize it, it's going to bring so many more people who, for some reason, want to pay players that they don't know, they have no attachment to, but they want them to come to their school. And is it for autographs? Is it for your car dealership? Is it for your air conditioning dealership? So there needs to be a lot of rules that come into this. That's why Gene Smith was against the California bill, but I think he's in favor of something happening because he sees it's coming.
Well, if all of that from a booster standpoint is kind of a skewed reason people get involved in sports, we want to be part of something bigger, something better. We want to be attached to something, and they have that importance attached to, hey, I'm the reason why this kid came, and now we're buddies, and I'm buddies with the players, and they hang out with me, and all of that, and that is not a good thing. So when the Johnny Manziel situation came down in regards to him apparently benefiting from an autograph that he signed, and then he was in a very strange ruling by the NCAA, he was found not guilty, that they didn't have any evidence on him, but he was suspended for the first half of the first game. Anyway, I basically stated there that this is a messy situation, and I'm not saying that I have the perfect way to solve it or regulate it, but I do believe, number one, that we live in the United States of America, and people should be able to profit from whatever skill, talent, fame that they have. Now, again, I have always stood by that the player should not be paid, that they are being paid already with a scholarship. Now that there are players and student athletes that come from different socioeconomic situations, and I don't want to just say, hey, this paper and this opportunity that you have to go to class and earn an education is good enough when you have no way of feeding yourself or clothing yourself, so that there should be some reasonable stipend payment, whether you pay them minimum wage or you give them a level of support. I think that should be included. Then separate from that, as regulated by the school, and this could become a nightmare, as Tony is letting us know, but in a perfect world, these kids should be able to benefit and earn money from their likeness, their autograph, whatever the case may be.
I just want to play EA Sports college football again.
Yeah, like I said on my podcast last night, I just hope I'm not too old to still enjoy playing video games by the time that thing comes back around in 2023 or whatever. I'll get my thumbs back maybe. But I think this is going to happen. It's just a matter of how they do it and who gets involved, because this is, as Gene Smith said on Tuesday, they have progressed in just the last 10 years in terms of cost of attendance and the Power Five basically moving separate from the group of five in terms of how much they want to spend. And you think back to, I go back to the 2006 college football media guides, had to be the same number of pages for every school. You couldn't have one more page than another school because that was seen as unfair. It's like an unfair advantage that you can print more records, that Texas could print more records than UAB. And we've come a long way. We've progressed, and this is just another step. I mean, you look at the playoffs. For a long time, that over everybody's dead body, were we going to get playoffs? And this is another one of those things that it's going to happen. And the NCAA, if they try to stop it, the NCAA, college football will just go away from the NCAA. What do they need it for? And the NCAA doesn't want to lose this big money college athletics. They don't want to lose basketball. That's what do they make, $1 billion a year from the tournament alone? So they'll massage their rules and fix it to where everybody gets made whole. But we were talking to Justin Fields on Tuesday, and you think this is a guy who could command, I don't know, I don't even know what the money's going to be, like $100,000 a year. I don't know. But when he was asked, do you think players should make money? His first thought was, yes, because we have families at home that could use it. And when people are against this money, players getting money, they're thinking usually like the players are already getting everything. I don't want to see them, walking around with gold watches and this and that. And you're thinking, the players are thinking, I just want my mom to have heat in the winter. That's what they're concerned about.
They're on meal plans.
And so what this could do for those families is huge. It could just the stress relief alone, just the betterment of life that way. And it would be so much of an advantage. You think that these kids going to college is great, but if there is money, the kids can't help their families other than they get to go to college for free.
And you're not guaranteed to go on to the next level.
Exactly. So if they can help the parents,
guys are like, oh, they're going to be making millions in the NFL, and that's your ticket, and that's what you deserve, and but that's a much smaller end of the funnel. A much smaller percentage of the guys end up going to the NFL. I mean, and it's a bigger percentage at a place like Ohio State or Clemson or Florida, but it's definitely that's where the funnel starts to get smaller. And there are plenty of guys that go on and they make different careers and they do well. And there are plenty of guys that don't know how to adjust to the reality of the real world. And it could definitely help someone kind of acclimate at that point. The minutia is stuff like, does it cause tension within a team? Does it cause culture issues within a team when one player's likeness is, making more than the other? If that stuff ends up happening, I'm sure we could make a whole show about this and the minutia behind it. But I'm very much in line with what you're saying.
Good stuff from these two. It's every week right here, 9:00 Eastern Time, Ohio State football talk here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And you have to, along with all the great Ohio State talk and all the other great college football talk, take the good with the bad and the occasional nuisance of a video that might say the three teams from the SEC might make the playoff. That may just have to be tolerated.
And a top 25 that makes sense.
89 on the line. Yes, the top 25 that actually makes sense, or as I like to say, the top 25 that actually makes sense. Auburn's number 1 this week.
The pause gets longer every week.
Pardon me?
The pause gets longer every week. The top 25.
So, man, I'm just doing this because it's my channel and my show, and I'll do this. So back in my Mississippi broadcasting days at a CBS station down there, I was sports director. We did a morning sportscast that was a 2-minute sportscast. So after my 11 o'clock show, I'd have to just do the top 2 minutes, and then it would air during the Good Morning America blah 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 segment or whatever. And the name of the segment was this is your first look at sports. So just the natural way that I talk, I say, this is Mark Rogers with your first look at sports. And then I just kept doing that. And after a couple of weeks, people were chuckling in the studio because it started to become, hey, this is Mark Rogers with your first look at, and then it just got crazy. Then I just like embellished it, and and then my news director comes in one day and he's throwing like letters down on my desk. He's like, people hate this, people love it, you're annoying, because I'm like, hey, this is Mark Rogers with your first look at, I'm going nuts with this, like doing it different ways every day, and so forth and so on. So I just had to throw that out there. Nobody wants to hear my stupid stories, but there you go.
We like your stories from the Mississippi station because there's an Archie Griffin story from that.
Oh, there's a great Archie Griffin story that I will tell in the off season when we've got nothing to talk about.
Yeah, Mark, everybody loves your stupid stories.
Because they're so stupid. Predictions. My prediction will be at the Voice of College Football Community. You go to the link in the description section below. All right, Claire. That was a stump face.
I'm going to go with something really unusual, and I'm going to say 38-12 Ohio State.
No more touchdowns, 4 field goals?
No more touchdowns. I'm still not letting them have a touchdown.
I will go 34-13. And I still wouldn't touch the 20 points.
34-13. Yeah, that's razor tight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the videos or our direct message board on Twitter and tally up everything. And I'm just going to go our straight up picks, which obviously we're undefeated, everybody, but against the spread as well. And we'll tally it up, and I'll come back with results, and then we'll keep track going through the season, or so I say. I'll probably end up having to go back through all the videos in like 3 weeks from now. But
who got it right last week, Mark?
Who got it right? Like I'm assuming you feel pretty good about your prediction, like you did.
Well, if nobody is here to correct me, then I'll just take credit for it. Yeah, I did. Unless Claire has actual proof.
What was your score last week, Tony?
I have no idea. No, I think I said I think I said like 45-28, so I was way off. Ish.
Oh, that's not way off.
38-17 was mine. I was close-ish.
I was just teetering. I don't believe I predicted a score, but I cannot take credit for a win against the spread because I was teetering on that 17-point line and actually took Nebraska in the 17.5. So I guess I was thinking like 45-31 or something like that.
And
31 points against that defense.
That's acceptable with that kind of offense, but I think we learned even more about that Ohio State defense.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. There you go, folks. If I missed any questions or comments in the chat, this is what it is. It's a live chat room. So if you want me to see those, you actually have to just copy and paste what you posted in the live chat. Just send it to one of the comments section of any of the videos, and I will see it. Claire Crawford, Tony Gerdeman, doing tremendous work talking Ohio State football. We had a good time again tonight, as we always do. Enjoy the game on Saturday night. 7:30 ABC, I believe. And not that you two need to know, you're probably going to the game. Claire, are you going to the game?
Yep,
going to the ball game.
All black. Represent.
All right, all black. It's not going to be the Buckeyes I grew up and loved, but those guys in the black uniforms. That's right. I got to root for them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the guys I'm rooting for. I forgot almost because the Michigan State unis and everything. Oh, that's what I grew up watching. The Michigan State. Oh, all right. I never liked it. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll go get off your lawn now.
Thanks, you too. Get off my lawn.
Go Bucks.
Thanks, you too.